Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, November the 24th, 2020. It is currently 12:24 p.m. Central Time. I'm here at Victory Baptist Church in Ovalo, Texas. It looks like a beautiful day outside. I think it's around 70 degrees. I'm here. I'm ready to go home and get some lunch, but I wanted to turn on the microphone. I wanted to go live. And I want to kind of throw out some thoughts here. Now, I don't have these completely fleshed out, and I don't really know how this would actually work. But I think there's an issue. There's a very troubling issue that has been true of Christianity for a very long time. I just think it's reached a tipping point, and something needs to be done about it. And I don't think I'm the solution. I don't want to be the solution. Someone's got to be, because not one person can be the solution. I think this is going to become something that every pastor needs to consider. Every church needs to think about it. And I think young people may be the bigger solution here. But let's start with trying to set this up. The issue we need to talk about today is purgatory. No. Not the theological idea of purgatory as taught within Catholicism, but the kind of the concept. And we're talking about a purgatory facing Fox News. And this purgatory facing Fox News really shines a light on a problem facing Christians, all right? Right now, there's a lot of discussion that Fox News is in a purgatory. They're kind of caught in this in-between place, right? Think of it this way. They're caught between, let's call it liberal hell, right? Or conservative heaven, all right? They're caught in between these two polar opposites, right? We understand the opposite of hell and heaven. We understand that. So they seem to be caught right now in between, like, Fox News is going liberal and we're going to abandon them, or do they stick and try to do everything that the conservatives want them to do so that they can be in conservative heaven? Now, I'm using this contrast because I think it really kind of explains the dilemma Fox News is in right now. If you listen to Christian radio and conservative media, there's a lot of talk that basically Fox News has gone to the dark side, that they're pursuing a liberal course. And so now viewers, according to some of the ratings, are abandoning Fox News in large numbers. And that Fox News is right now in this purgatory, and they're hurting themselves, that they're either going to have to choose go all the way liberal or go all the way conservative, but trying to be in between, that's not allowed in 2020. You cannot do that, and they're going to be hurt. So people are, you're being told you need to watch Newsmax, you need to turn to this, you need to turn to that, because Fox News is bad. You're not supposed to read the Drudge Report anymore. According to the Drudge Report, has just on Christian radio, I think 2 days ago, they were talking about how bad Fox News is and how bad the Drudge Report. You can't trust them anymore. So you got to turn to something else. And this raises a lot of questions. So let me first give you the report itself that I have here in front of me. And then I'm going to explain how this really has something to do with us as Christians, all right? Let me pull up the story here. I'm getting all kinds of notifications. All right, here we go. This was published November the 23rd at 8:10 a.m. So yesterday, a little over 24 hours, all right? Fox News identity crisis. Indulge Trump's election conspiracy or reject it and watch its audience flee. So they're caught in between. They're in a purgatory, right? They call it a dilemma, but this Theology Central, I'll use a theological concept. Not that I accept purgatory, but you get the idea. This idea that they're caught in this in between. They either indulge Trump's election conspiracy, they go full blown with that, or they reject it. And if they reject it, then everybody's like, they've gone liberal. They've entered into the liberal side, and we need to flee, and we need to turn to Newsmax and turn to other alternative sources. This is how the story reads. Viewers of Fox News can be forgiven if they are confused about the results of the 2020 election. The reason for their confusion is less defensible. Fox News has projected Joe Biden to have won the election. Well, its new division has. At the very same time, the network's top-rated opinion hosts have continued to entertain the increasing loony conspiracy theory that the election was stolen from Trump through widespread voter fraud. They have been careful in their words, but the near constant amplification of baseless allegations of a rigged or stolen election has lent credibility to the InfoWars-esque conspiracy theories being touted by Trump. InfoWars, that's Alex Jones, all right? The same theories mocked behind closed doors are being laughed out of courtrooms. The growing disconnect between the two sides of Fox News programming reveals its current identity crisis and raises a question about their immediate future. Do they want to be a news outlet where facts, as disappointing as they may be, are paramount, or an information entertainment company that today solely acts as cheerleaders for outgoing President Donald Trump? All right. The dissonance was neatly illustrated last weekend when Maria, and I don't know how to say her last name, Bart Eromo, I guess is how you say it, a Fox News anchor. I apologize. I don't watch Fox News enough to know her name. So Maria, she's a Fox News anchor and an ardent Trump booster who had just given the platform of her Sunday morning show to Trump lawyers Rudy Giuliani and, wait for it, Sidney Powell. Okay. Right. Everyone, I'm telling you, Sidney Powell was everywhere. Okay. Both laid out wild and unproven conspiracy theories and claimed that Trump was the rightful winner of the election. I'm going to call her Maria, seemed pleased to hear the news and never once challenged her guests on their claims, simply accepting their claims that they had evidence as evidence enough. Hey, we have evidence. We're not going to tell you the evidence. And Fox News, or at least Maria's, okay, then that's evidence enough. Well, no, that's not evidence. That's an allegation. But just an hour or so later, Fox News reporter Eric Shawn filed a thorough report that effectively debunked every single claim that had been presented as real on Maria's show. It was yet another look at Fox News schizophrenia, and viewers who watched both segments surely endured intense whiplash. A similar moment occurred when Fox News host Pete Hegseth reported on air that so far state election officials have not reported serious irregularities with the vote that would affect the outcome of the race. Immediately after, the Trump-boosting host added, that was in the teleprompter. I read it. I don't even know if I believe it. No wonder that a recent poll found 70% of Republicans believe President Donald Trump was cheated out of the election. Where did these Republicans get their news? Newsmax, and from top hosts at Fox like Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham remain the most prominent sources for the president's supporters. Trump alone is not responsible for such vast indoctrination. His baseless claims of a stolen election are just unhinged musings and the absence of a pro-Trump media taking them seriously. Now, we can stop right there and we could go through this whole report, because my focus is not on the report, right? Now you can believe the election was stolen or not believe the election was stolen. I'm not going to get back into that whole controversy because I want to talk about news. All right? Because here's what happens. 70% of the people believe one way because they get their news from a source that states that's the way it is. Other people don't believe it that way because they get their news from sources that say it's not the way it is. So in other words, your worldview is greatly determined by the news and where you get your news. Now, here is what I want to do. I want to transition it out of all of that. All right. Listen to me carefully, or you're going to send me emails demonstrating you didn't hear me. All right. Listen to me carefully. All right. You have, we'll call it, the average Joe. We'll call him Joe. All right. You have Joe. All right. We'll have Joe and Susie. All right. Joe and Susie are just your average person. they're not Christians. They're not believers in Jesus Christ. Okay. They turn on the news. They get their news. They develop their worldview. They have their ideology. They share that ideology on Facebook. They share it with people at work. They vote a certain way. They think a certain way. They have their worldview. All right. That's not my concern. My concern is when that Joe and Susie are Christians. They are Christians. And they get their worldview. Do Christians get their worldview more from Christianity and more from the church, or do they get their worldview more from the news they watch or the media they consume? What is really shaping the way they think, the way they see the world, the way they perceive the world, and the way they understand the world? So this raises a very important question that I've been thinking about, and I've thought about it most of the night. What is the responsibility of a pastor who's supposed to be shepherding people and trying to shepherd them to have a correct understanding of what's happening in the world around them? Like a pastor can stand behind the pulpit, preach the scriptures, right? Which is what they're supposed to do. Don't get me wrong. They're supposed to preach the scriptures, right? And those people take the scriptures where they hear scriptures about telling the truth, not bearing false witness, believing the truth, that there's such a thing as truth. And then as soon as the sermon is over, sometimes in the very sanctuary of the church or the parking lot of the church, you hear them start talking about the world, what's happening maybe with the election, with COVID, and you start hearing, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. That sounds like QAnon. That sounds like, wait, that's misinformation. Wait, you're bearing false witness. Wait, that's not true. And you start hearing, you're like, wait a minute, did you not hear my sermon on not bearing false witness, not telling you the truth? Like, where's the disconnect? And I'm curious, and I'm throwing this out there to you. Do you think it's a responsibility for churches now to say, hey, people, here's what's happening in our culture right now. Here's what, Fox News may be saying this, CNN may be saying this. We need to think about it biblically. Is it becoming more of a necessity that pastors engage what's happening in the culture? Not necessarily from the pulpit, but they can use technology, right? Every pastor who has a desk and an office at his church can own what I'm holding I'm not holding it in my hand. It's sitting here right here in front of me. I'm going to pick it up. The microphone. Yeah, that's the microphone. Okay, I'm going to end up messing up the microphone and knocking myself off the air. They can buy a microphone. The one I'm looking at, I think, costs $200, right? A laptop, which most pastors in their offices probably have a computer. I plug in this microphone right there into the USB port. I open up software provided by Spreaker, podcast hosting site. I give my podcast a title. I find some artwork. I give it some tags so that it'll be found on the internet. I hit the big red go live button, and then I can talk about what's happening in the world. Is it now becoming absolutely... Now, years ago, when Sermon Audio was like, hey, we think we need to talk about current events from a biblical perspective, and then I came up with the idea of News in Focus, and we created the News in Focus section. And it never turned into what I wanted it to turn into, because what I wanted it to turn into is I wanted all pastors on Sermon Audio turning on their mic, talking about the news from a biblical perspective. But what started happening is pastors were turning on their mics, the few that did, because most didn't even bother to take advantage of the program, because they could post their content in the News and Focus section. The ones who did were like half insane. They were like, it was like crazy stuff, right? Like stuff about Obama, conspiracy theories. It was like conspiracy this, conspiracy that. And I'm like, wait a minute. If the church can't even speak about these subjects from a truthful position, we are in trouble. So my thought was, wait a minute. If these pastors can't even talk about the news from a truthful perspective, we're in trouble. However, is it though? So the question isn't, will pastors actually talk about these things in a truthful way? The issue is, do you think it's a necessity now for Christians to have a place that they can turn to go, okay, here's what's happening in our world. You name the big issue, whatever it is. Hunter Biden and a supposed laptop that contained all of this information. Should the pastor turn on the microphone going, okay, Christians, here's what we need to think about this. We need to be very careful. We don't need to bear false witness. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. Here are the accusations. Here's what proof we have. What does it matter? What does it mean? How should this reflect on Joe Biden? Should the sins of the son reflect on the father? Does this imply that the father did something? Like, how should we handle this? Or does character matter in an election when 80% of Christians voted for Donald Trump? So does character only matter when it's a Democrat? Like, raise some important questions and get Christians thinking. Should we do that? Do you think that's a responsibility of a pastor to do that? Now, I'm not saying do it from the pulpit, all right? Now, the Because here's the thing, the pulpit needs, now I'm not saying that the issues can never be addressed from the pulpit, but the pulpit's primary purpose is obviously to proclaim the word of God, to teach the scriptures. But do you think pastors, you need to look at other avenues and try to talk about things from a biblical perspective? Now, my fear is, even if we say yes, that most pastors are going to be out there promoting, because the pastors are getting their news. I think here, have we reached a point that Christians can no longer sit in front of a television and be able to distinguish between opinion and fact, between allegation and truth? Have Christians lost the ability of discernment, that we can never go, they're saying this, they're saying this. Okay, what is the evidence? Do you think it's the responsibility now of pastors to try to almost basically provide a news coverage? Hey, here's what everyone's reporting. Here's what the conservatives are saying. Here are what the liberals are saying. Here's what we think the truth is from a Christian biblical perspective. Here is how you should respond to this and how you should think about this from a biblical perspective. Do you think that's now becoming like absolutely necessary for Christians to do, for pastors to do, for churches to do, to provide that? Because I think Christians, we're not thinking about what's happening in our world from a biblical perspective. So much of the discussion about COVID from Christians, to me, completely lacks any biblical worldview. It doesn't have a biblical worldview. It sounds more political, more conspiratorial, more narcissistic about trying to make a point. I've heard, reports from Christians that the mask, wearing a mask is taking the mark of the beast. I've heard craziness. So that means Christians are getting their ideas from crazy websites, or they have a political point. Hey, this whole COVID thing is a political plot to take control, or whatever they're spouting. Do you think we need churches to go, stop, everyone? We need to think about this. Okay, listen, slow down, everyone. We're Christians, right? We're not Republicans. We're not Democrats. We're Christians. Okay, our citizenship is in heaven. We're not even Americans first. We're Christians first, right? Or whatever country you may live in. You're not a Canadian first. You're a Christian first. You're not a citizen of Italy first. You're a citizen of Christianity, a citizen of heaven first, right? I was going to say you're a citizen of America first. No, people from other countries, you're only a citizen of America. What am I talking about? Okay, so, but I was already thinking 2 steps ahead and I messed my words up there. I apologize. But I'm what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I just don't know what is the responsibility of a pastor. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Now, some people say just preach the scriptures, just preach the scriptures. But if we're just preaching the scriptures, and somehow the people sitting in the pew then turn around and spout lies, half-truths, misinformation, bear false witness, then we're preaching the scriptures, but we're not dealing with the issues sitting right there in front of us in the pulpit or in the pews. If we know everyone there is thinking, because I don't know about your church, I can almost guarantee, I probably am wrong, but I bet you the majority of the people in my church watch Fox News. And so their perspective about the world is being more shaped by Fox News than sermons. I bet you many of them probably watch Fox News more than they listen to sermons. So what's the responsibility? Now, the problem is you start trying to address it and you don't go with the Fox News narrative or Newsmax narrative or Alex Jones narrative, then they get mad at you, believing now you're a liberal trying to destroy the world and you're a socialist and a Marxist, because they're more worried about that than their own spiritual condition. I don't know what the future of Fox News is. I think Fox News has found themselves in a major dilemma, and I think there's going to probably be some internal struggle, and someone's going to have to get control and figure out what the future is. In the meantime, Christians are flocking away from Fox News, and they're turning on to Newsmax. Well, if Christians are now getting their news from Newsmax, I've watched Newsmax, we're in trouble. Okay, we're in trouble because, again, make sure you hear what I'm saying. This is about shaping the Christian worldview. The Christian worldview has to be shaped from the Bible, but you also need people telling you, hey, because look, it's not like, here's what's going on with COVID. Okay, let me look up that scripture on COVID. This is how I'm to think about COVID. No, a pastor has to then come along to the people and say, here's COVID. Here are the biblical principles we need to think about in regards to COVID, so that we think about the COVID situation from a biblical perspective. Godly wisdom, not an earthly, sensual, devilish wisdom. I think all pastors need to do that. Hey, but what I'm afraid is that when they do it, they're just going to go. They're just going to promote. I think the pastors will promote more of a like Fox News, Newsmax, or whatever, Rush Limbaugh, whoever they listen to. They're going to promote that theory more than they are a biblical theory. How do we purge out all of the conflicting worldviews that so influence Christianity to not really reflect Bible, but reflect everything else? I think the only way we can fix it is Christians have to speak up. I think young Christians who use social media could be a major asset to the Christian church. Hand over stuff to young people if they have truly a biblical worldview, and help them use all of their technological skills to be out there going, hey, everyone on Twitter, like the young people tend to know what everyone's talking about on social media. They're like, hey, everyone's talking about this today, right? Okay, so pastor, what can we do? What should be our message in regards to this? I'm like, well, first the young people needed to be able to figure it out biblically. And then you help counsel them and say, okay, boom, TikTok videos, boom, Instagram post, create a meme, create memes, try to get it to go viral, TikTok video, whatever, I said YouTube video. Okay, I'm repeating myself with the TikTok video, but then getting an army of Christian young people who think biblically to use technology to get a Christian worldview out there, not so much for the world, but for fellow Christians. Like an army of young people who expose the conspiracy theories and the lies and the hoaxes that Christians are sharing on social media. Like it would be a ministry to Christians. And then the pastor could address it in a more traditional way, teaching like a podcast, and then get it out there. I just think like Fox News is in trouble. They're in a dilemma, but I believe Christianity is in a dilemma. I believe Christianity is in kind of, I hate to say it, we're in a purgatory as well. And sadly, the people want to give us two options: conservative, pro-Republican, or liberal or progressive. And I want to blow that up and say, no, those are not our options. They're not even a choice. Our only option is we are Christians first and we pursue truth. And we have to learn to think about every issue that we encounter in the world, right, from a biblical perspective. Hey, there's a situation going on in Syria. What's a biblical way to think about this? Hey, America and their foreign policy, that we're possibly going to send troops into a war. Okay, well, are we going to use the just war doctrine that's been a part of Christian history forever, since Augustine? Are we going to say, here are the elements of just war? This war does not meet the just war doctrine. Therefore, as Christians, we do not support the war. Well, if you do that, then you're like, you don't support the troops? You're not an American? Well, no. I'm a Christian first. Right? It's like I almost have to. I think we've got to. I think we've got to really think about this. I don't know what the solution is. I just feel like that Christians are the way they think is not biblical. It's coming from these other media sources: Glenn Beck, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin. You can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Fox News, Newsmax, Blaze TV, you name the outlet. Okay, was it OAN or ONN? There's another news network out there like that. Wherever the case may be, and I'm thinking, what's going on? Like, what do we do? I think it's becoming more important that Christians learn critical thinking skills to be able to discern. Like they did a study, I don't know how long ago, where they took, I think it was kids in high school, maybe it was freshmen in college. I don't remember exactly all the details, but they basically gave them newspapers. And they wanted the kids to read the newspaper article, and then they had to write out what in the article was opinion, what in the article was fact. And it was amazing how the kids had a hard time distinguishing what were the factual statements in the article versus what was the opinion statements in the article. In other words, they had a hard time distinguishing between fact and opinion. And you've got people who are inside your church, and I've got people inside of my church who spouts forth, they speak and they put forth things, and you're like, wait a minute, where did you get that idea from? Well, I saw it on the news. Did you not realize that that was an opinion and not a fact? Did you not where's your critical thinking skills? Or you're relying on logical fallacy and flawed critical thinking skills to derive opinions that are not biblical, they're not truthful, they're not accurate, and therefore you're now spreading these false information all over the internet as you claim to be a Christian. That is ungodly. I don't know what the solution is. I don't really know what the solution. I just think churches we've got to take on, I know what I'm doing. I mean, I've got the Theology Central podcast where I try to provide more biblical teaching is what my focus is. Now, this last couple of days it hasn't, but devotions, Bible studies, that because I think people need to be fed the Word of God. Look, we got to first fix the biblical illiteracy problem. Because every other problem cannot be fixed unless we fix the biblical illiteracy problem. So we got to get Christians who want to listen to Bible teaching, studying the Bible, thinking about the Bible. We've got to get back. We cannot throw that out. All right. We can't forget that. But the other time, we've got to address issues from a biblical perspective to try to get Christians thinking biblically about them. Or they are basically what happens. We have Christians who embrace the Bible, but then contradict the Bible in their political ideology and their worldview. I think that's where we are. We have Christians who say they embrace the Bible, but then literally contradict the Bible in the way they view in their worldview, their ideology, and their politics. And we cannot have that disconnect. I think we've got a serious problem here. But when I just heard Fox News and the dilemma they're facing, I'm like, well, there's a dilemma we're facing. Because Christians are being more influenced by these other sources than they are. I mean, like American Family Radio, they love to talk. I mean, we just spent almost an hour listening to them in the last episode. They spend all kinds of time talking about today's issues, but in many cases, they demonstrate not even a biblical worldview. They come across more Republican and conservative than they do Christian. There's got to be a way to present the information. Hey, guys, here's the issue. But as soon as you do that, just like whenever Fox News tries to do it hopefully in an even-handed way, people get mad and then leave. And I know that when I try to present things from a biblical perspective, it's Christians who get mad at me because I'm not Republican enough or conservative. And it's like, no, I'm trying to be a Christian. What do you not get? I mean, have we lost the war? And we just give up? I don't like giving up. I'm not good at giving up. I mean, sometimes I want to give up, but I'm not good at giving up. Maybe I should be. Maybe I'm foolish. I don't know the answer. But I will just argue that there's something not right. There's a disconnect. We hold the Bible and then we contradict the Bible when so many issues are talked about or addressed. When it doesn't matter it can be political, social, cultural, and we think, and you're like, where did that thinking come from? The thinking is coming from other media sources who are talking about these issues. So shouldn't the church talk about these issues in an appropriate way in an appropriate venue? Maybe not from the pulpit. Now, at times they need to be addressed from the pulpit, but even that needs to be done in a more kind of a biblical way. But can we talk about those issues in other ways to try to get people to think about them in a correct way? There's got to be an answer here. I know I'm not giving you an answer, but I'm really trying. I'm really struggling with this because when I get the emails from Christians, I'm just sitting there looking at them going, what in the world are they? Where did their thinking come from? And then you start looking at that, that comes from Alex, that comes from Newsmax, that comes from Glenn Beck. You're like, where is Christianity in their response? Where is it? Because they've been hijacked. Well, the only way that you can kind of, in a sense, overcome the hijacking is you've got to have the church going, okay, we're going to talk about these issues. We're going to talk about them, and we're going to try to get our people to think biblically. But I just think sometimes even the pastors who produce content that supposedly are addressing today's issues, they don't sound any different than Rush, Glenn, Sean, Fox, Newsmax. And when we sound just like the world, that should be a warning sign that we have been corrupted by the world. And when the church sounds like the world and our thinking is not showing that we've been the renewing of our minds, a transformation, that our minds are being conformed to the world and not conformed to Christ, I don't need the mind of Newsmax. I don't need the mind of Alex, Rush, Sean, whoever the person may be, or of CNN, MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, whomever on the liberal side. I need the mind of Christ, and the mind of Christ obviously will always look. Whenever we deal with the issues of the world, we're never going to sound like them because God's ways are not our ways. It's not the world's ways. God's thoughts are not the world's thoughts. The Bible is not going to lead us to the same conclusions. And when we constantly find ourselves basically in step with the way the world thinks from a conservative perspective or a liberal perspective, that's pretty much a sign that we're not being biblical. And I think that's where we are. And because the church in many cases either just reflects what the world is saying, we're not offering a true biblical alternative, or we're not addressing them at all, and the people in the pew are getting their marching orders from something other than a Christian perspective. All right, I'll stop right there. You can share your thoughts. I just threw it out there. Now you can help me flesh it out a little bit, right? Give me and I know some people who listen here, some of you do podcasts, some of you do YouTube channels. What's your thoughts? I mean, you have a microphone, you talk. Tell me what you think, all right? Let's talk about it. Is there a solution here somehow? What is the solution? You tell me what you think. And I know some of you don't like to talk, you don't want a podcast talking about the news, and I understand you don't. But when you talk, but if you don't want to hear me talk about the news, but whenever you get into a conversation about the news, are you truly reflecting a biblical worldview in your comments? Because unless you hear them discussed from a biblical perspective, how are you reflecting them? And are you just avoid all subjects like that? How are you? What's your course of what's your solution? So yeah, just let me know. newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. All right, I'm going to stop for today. I'll be back here tomorrow for a number of hours of live broadcasting tomorrow. I'll probably be here. I'm going to try to be here like a long time tomorrow, but we've got to get back to other things, to some Bible teaching. The Book of James, chapter 4, Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis, and we're looking at the Niagara Creed from the 19th century. We need to get back to that. We're doing Romans 7 on Sunday mornings here. We got a lot of things to get to, and just let me know. And whenever we finish the Imitation of Christ, I think we're gonna move to the book, The Christian in Complete Armor. I think it's called The Christian in Complete Armor, a very famous book. I think we may move to that. That could be interesting. I don't know. But we're definitely going to continue to try to make sure I have a balance here where we're talking about Scripture and those kinds of things. So if there's something you want me to cover, talk about, study, email me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. All right, everyone have a great day. I need food, and I need it now. God bless.